how many of these words you already know. In today's video, you'll learn not just some, but many advanced vocabulary. But fair warning, the difficulty will increase as we go. No more delays, let's jump right in. As the deadline loomed, I found myself inundated with last-minute revisions. My desk was a chaotic mosaic of scribbled notes, reference books, and coffee-stained printouts. Despite my usual ability to stay meticulous, fatigue was beginning to cloud my judgment. I had resorted to working through the night, surviving on caffeine and sheer determination. Every time I tried to rest, my mind became engulfed with self doubt. Was the report coherent enough? Had I addressed all the client's concerns? The mounting pressure felt relentless. Yet, strangely, I thrived on the challenge. Inundated meaning overwhelmed, especially with things to deal with. For example, after announcing the sale, the shop was inundated with customers. Meticulous meaning showing great attention to detail, very careful and precise. For example, she's always meticulous in her research, checking every source twice. Resort to, meaning to do something undesirable because other options have failed. For example, he had to resort to borrowing money from friends to pay his bills. Engulfed, meaning completely surrounded or absorbed by something. For example, she was engulfed by grief after losing her beloved dog. Coherent, meaning logical and well organized, easy to understand. For example, his essay was clear, coherent, and persuasive. Relentless meaning never ending or unyielding in intensity. For example, the heat was relentless throughout the summer. I had rehearsed the pitch countless times, fine tuning every sentence until it felt seamless. Walking into the boardroom, I masked my nerves with a facade of confidence. The room was sterile and imposing, with high ceilings and watchful eyes. As I began, one executive kept scrutinizing my slides, his expression unreadable. A bead of sweat trickled down my spine, but I pushed forward, determined not to waver. When the presentation ended, the room fell silent. A pause so heavy it felt ominous. Then, a smile cracked across the executive's face. "Impressive," he said. Relief washed over me. Seamless meaning, smooth and without any problems or interruptions. For example, the transition between the scenes was so seamless, the audience barely noticed. Facade, meaning a deceptive outward appearance or mask. For example, she maintained a cheerful facade even though she was struggling inside. Imposing meaning, grand and intimidating in appearance or manner. For example, the castle was an imposing structure on the cliff edge. Scrutinize, meaning to examine something very carefully. For example, the editor scrutinized every sentence in the article. Waver meaning to lose strength, determination, or confidence. For example, she never wavered in her belief that she would succeed. Ominous meaning, suggesting that something bad might happen. For example, dark clouds gathered overhead, casting an ominous shadow on the field. Washed over me, meaning to suddenly feel a strong emotion. For example, a wave of guilt washed over me as I read her letter. The conference room was suffused with a palpable tension that made it hard to concentrate. I tried to remain composed, but inside, I felt my confidence eroding with every pointed question. My colleagues' trenchant remarks only added to my unease. Suddenly, the CEO's laconic feedback caught me off guard. Brief, but piercing. I realized I needed to be more resilient if I wanted to thrive in this cutthroat environment. Determined not to let this setback define me, I resolved to return stronger and more prepared. Palpable meaning, so intense that it can almost be felt physically. For example, there was a palpable sense of excitement in the air before the concert. Composed, meaning calm and in control of emotions. For example, despite the chaos, she remained composed and handled the situation expertly. Erode, meaning to gradually weaken or destroy something. For example, constant criticism began to erode his self esteem. Trenchant, meaning sharp, clear, and effective, especially of comments or criticism. For example, the lawyer's trenchant arguments convinced the jury quickly. Laconic, meaning using very few words, brief and to the point. For example, his laconic reply made it clear he wasn't interested in a long discussion. Piercing, meaning very sharp or intense, can be literal or figurative. For example, she gave me a piercing look that made me nervous. Resilient, meaning able to recover quickly from difficulties. For example, the resilient community rebuilt their homes after the flood. Setback, meaning a problem that delays progress or makes things worse. For example, the injury was a major setback in his athletic career.